I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, moving on to item number 2, comments from the public. These are non-agendized items. And Jesse, please come to the podium. Yeah.
I want to as the board for the fine work being done on the 3 parcels in my neighborhood: the water tower, the filtration plant, and that one little patch down there on Cold Creek. Chris Stanley and his maintenance bunch do a great job keeping that up straight. We work hard to keep the fire risk at bay. Each of the fireized communities will end their activities for the summer. Not end, but cap their first week of August. We call them the community work days, where we try to get everybody out, finish it all up, and we call it good. Thanks for what you do. Appreciate very much the work that Chris done and the maintenance bunch. Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you.
Okay, any other public comments, non-agendized items? Seeing none. Moving on to item number 3, corrections to the agenda or consent calendar. Anybody? Moving on to item number 4, adoption of the consent calendar. We have a motion?
I'll move the consent calendar.
I'll second that. We have a motion and a second.
Oh, sorry, I'm slow.
And that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Moving on to item 5, there are no items moved forward, so moving on to item 6A. Unpaid delinquent accounts for sewer and water. Ryan Lee. This is a public hearing, and we are opening the public hearing.
Very good. Good afternoon. I am Ryan Lee, the district's customer service manager, and I'm here to present to you this year's list of delinquent water and sewer balances to be placed on the El Dorado County property tax rolls. So I'll give a little bit of background on how this process works. This is something that we have the opportunity to do once a year. The county opens this up in July, and we have until August 10th of every year. There's kind of a statutory deadline to get this list finalized and over to them for placement on the property tax rolls. And the way that this works is that we collect a list of all of our delinquent and water and sewer accounts, and that delinquent balance we send to the El Dorado County Auditor's Office, and those balances then show up on the property tax statements for these parcels. So they're just they call it a direct charge. What it is a line item on the property tax statement that references the STPUD delinquent balance. As the county gets those property tax payments in, they send those directly to the district, and they actually do that every month. So as payments come in, the district receives the portion of that bill that is related to our delinquent balance. And we've been doing this a long time, at least 20 years, and it works very well. So some of the reasons that we do this is that it's an extremely efficient, cost-effective way of collecting these delinquent balances. So that, just for your reference, the county's cost recovery, so what they charge us in order to do this, if we were going to collect $1.2 million on their property tax rolls, the cost to the district is $750. So that money comes in, it's very cheap for us to do that, and we've been doing it a long time. And another one of the reasons that we do that is because in the past we have had a more robust collections program, and we had dedicated staff doing collections, but in recent years the state has been cracking down on or tightening the regulations in order to do disconnections for non-payment, especially on water utilities. And after COVID, they really passed a lot of regulations that made that much more difficult to do. And so as we stopped doing disconnections because of the amount of work that it is, and it just, at the end of the day, it's very difficult to do it. If any customer, if the bill is a hardship to them or the delinquent balance is a hardship to them, then we're not able to disconnect them for non-payment. So this is a way that the district can collect those balances without performing disconnections. And so I always give the board kind of a breakdown of what the list looks like each year. So this year, our list started at about 825 accounts and $1.4 million, And the way that this works is that we formulate the list as soon as we do our July billing. So these are delinquent balances through June. In order to end up on this list, these customers are typically 3 to 4 months past due with us. So it's not every delinquent balance. These are just significantly delinquent balances that end up on this list. And so then once we send out notification letters to all of these customers, they have until July 31st to pay that delinquent balance if they would like to avoid it being transferred to El Dorado County. So every year we have quite a few people who do pay, and as they pay, the balance goes down and the number of accounts that we end up transferring to the county continues to decrease. So what the board will be approving today is a list that will be smaller by the time we send it to the county, so more people will come off, and I always will provide an update on what the final numbers were. Like I said, we started at 1.4 million, about 825 accounts. As of today, it's down to 1.2 million and 735 accounts. So we're already, halfway through the month, and we've gotten quite a few people who have come off of that list. I was giving a little bit of a makeup of what these accounts look like, because this is something that we track year to year to kind of look at the metrics of how is the list made up. So this year, we have about 30% of the people on the list are multifamily or commercial customers or sewer-only accounts. So those are typically even more difficult to disconnect if we were going to try to collect to disconnect for non-payment. Sewer-only, there's really no way to disconnect them. And so the 30%, or that 30% of the list accounts for about $550,000, and it's 35% of the list. Looking at just the top 25 accounts on the list, those are 3% of the accounts, and they make up 25% of the balance. So we're always kind of looking really at if there are kind of shifts in the weights of these different groups. And what we saw this year, so this starting balance is higher than we've seen in the past. And so I was looking at the data, and what it looks like is that it's made, more of the list this year is made up of commercial accounts than we've seen in the past, and the average balance on those accounts is much higher than we've seen in the past. Kind of bigger discrepancy than what would be accounted for just by the rate increases. So the average balance on these commercial accounts on our list is about $6,000. And commercial accounts, there are only 45 accounts on the list, but they make up $250,000. So again, we're looking at just in commercials, 5% of the parcels, 20% of the total dollar amount. So that is a big change. The other reason that the list is starting at a higher dollar amount than we've seen the last 2 years in tax roll is that we received about $500,000 of federal money that flowed through the state of California that was directly related to the COVID aid coming out of the pandemic. So this was money that was designated for past due balances that had accrued during the pandemic years. They continued to expand that program, so we applied a couple times and got quite a bit of money that basically directly reduced the tax roll turnover for the last 2 years. But, let's see here. Yeah, so those are the main differences that it looks like are driving the balance up this time. The average balance, delinquent balance for just our single-family residential customers is about $1,100. So you can see kind of significantly less than average balance on these commercial accounts. But as far as the number of customers, single-family continues to make up the biggest portion of it. About 70% of the total number of accounts are single-family, but smaller balances. We have many customers who, since we've been doing this for so long, that they are on the list every year, and that they like that. It's a way for them to pay their bill all at once, and so the district has always seen it as a kind of that it works well for us to get these balances collected, and if it works well for the customers, then we're not having to, devote a lot of time and resources to collections. If we did want to do that, we've found that we do need dedicated collection staff. It is a full-time job, just to really keep up on, establishing payment plans and then making sure that we're tracking those month to month and making sure that we're keeping up with each customer. It's quite a lot of outreach. So with that said, I've attached a resolution that the county requires in order for us to place these accounts on their tax roll, and it has an attachment which kind of shows you the list of parcels as they stand. That was actually as of yesterday morning. And so, like I said, that will continue to come down, and I'll give the board an update after we do the tax roll on what the final numbers were. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about this list or this process or the accounts on the list.
Just a quick question. No, I agree with everything you said. I think it's a great kind of process to move this forward, so no question on that. Just kind of thinking from the meeting we were just in, are there a lot of these delinquent accounts that are receiving some level of like financial assistance from the district, either tier 1 or tier 2? Kind of a mixed bag? Are you seeing any kind of patterns?
It's kind of a mixed bag. Yeah, not all of them, and that's what I wanted. What I didn't do yet is look at, we just had a finance committee meeting where we were talking about our customer assistance program, and what I would like to do is look at that list of customers who are on Liberty's program. I've talked to the board in the past about this, but we've gotten a list from Liberty of anyone who qualifies for their care program and is enrolled, and there are about 600 customers who are in their program, not in ours. I'd like to see if a lot of those are making up the tax rolls, because it really is not that that a big portion of these accounts is on our care program. We have a lot of care customers whose accounts are current, so they're not falling behind, and so it's kind of an interesting dynamic.
I think that cross-reference is a good idea, and that's kind of what I was going with the thought. And I know we'll talk about it more, so I'll kind of save that for later, but I think that's a good spot. So, but beyond that, no more questions for me.
On the commercial front and multifamily, do you know, have any idea of how many, like, the percentage was of those are vacant? I know there's a lot of apartment buildings and things of that are being renovated, and commercial properties down Lake Tahoe Boulevard, for instance, that don't have businesses in them. So just curious on that. It's a good question and something that I've not looked at, but we could. I mean, we could look at water usage. It would be interesting to see. I haven't looked at that in the past.
Okay.
I have one last quick question. You talked about how year to year, one of the changes is the fact that last year we had a lot of COVID relief money come through. So because of that, do you think that the list is quite a bit larger this year because of people's learned experience that, they just want to keep their balances higher just in case more free federal money comes rolling through?
I don't think so. I wouldn't think that that's really coming into play. It was funny, like that money came out of nowhere basically. Those people had not even heard of the program, most of them, until they got a letter from us saying, we just applied, it was up to like $2,000 you could get applied to your account. But yeah, I don't think so. Honestly, I think part of why it's higher is that the COVID money that we got just skewed the last few years, and so I think it would have been on track year to year, but when I ran the numbers this year, I double-checked them because it was significantly higher, but that's kind of what I was doing, is like, it's just growing with as the rates increase, and also there's something else going on. So like I talked about those commercial accounts, more commercial accounts with higher balances. I think that reflects just the economics of the town right now, because it's different from what we've seen kind of. I do this report, I've done it for years and years, and so I have all these numbers going back to like 2015 on this, and it's different. So this year is the first year that really looked different in that regard. And that's interesting.
One of the things that we have learned over the years, which I find very interesting at least, as just a utility customer in general, is we have a lot of customers that just prefer to pay their bill this way. They prefer just to make a once-a-year payment, and pay it off through their property tax, even though that means they've incurred multiple late fees because of that. But that's just their preference.
Yeah, and again, like in the past when we used to do dedicated collections, what we found out, and I used to be, for a couple of years, I was the district's dedicated collections representative, and so I worked really closely with a lot of these customers, and what I found at that time was there were a lot of them that just really didn't have the money to keep up with the bills, and at that time it was quarterly. This was one of the things. It may be easier now that we're monthly, because one of the things that was really painful was, the bill would be $300 a quarter, so if you missed a payment, then your $600 balance requires $200 a month payments if you're going to catch up. So when I was working with them, we did disconnections back in the day, but it was mostly vacant properties or things like that, because what I found is that we were working with a lot of families who lived here who just didn't have the money. And so again, to Paul's point, like the tax roll was a way, they would make payments throughout the year and kind of work on the balance, but then tax roll would kind of clean it up and give them a clean slate. And so every August, when we did the tax roll transfer, that's when I would kind of work more closely with them and try to get them on a payment plan so they could budget monthly. And they would have things come up throughout the month. So again, it was hard. They would inevitably just kind of fall behind. But it's tough. At least it was back then. So there was a lot of people struggling. But Paul's right that, yeah, we had a lot of people who kind of relied on the tax roll, and when we would come after them and start working on payment plans or disconnection proceedings, they would ask us, well, what about the tax roll? Right? It's like, last year you didn't do this, you just sent it over there. So it's always been a balancing act. We, the district, as a kind of community partner too, and collections is important, and we have to have the revenues to do the work that we do, but that's why the tax roll has always been kind of a good mix, because we get the money. So it's not like we're writing this off. The vast majority of the property taxes come in on time, even if they're not paying our bills. A lot of customers have impound accounts through the mortgage company, so those monthly payments just get adjusted to account for the property tax statement. So it kind of just forces them to budget our bill into their monthly expenses. And so that's how it's always kind of worked here, is that it works for the district, it works for the customers. And we still do collections on, especially like our large commercial accounts. We're always looking out for things that don't make sense, especially if we have a large account that has a perfect payment history, and then all of a sudden we don't get a payment for 2 or 3 months. We're reaching out to them to, find out what's going on, because a lot of times it's just in accounting. They've had a change in how they handle accounting, and something slipped through the cracks.
Just curiosity. So I guess in the future, like when we present this information, it'd be good to get a sense of that time series, that trend in terms of how this is rolling out. This seems to me like you're saying, it is probably a pretty decent economic indicator of kind of the state of our local economy. So I guess it'd be interesting to just for me, it'd be interesting to kind of see what that trend looks like. And then I guess the other, maybe the metric is maybe the proportion of our ratepayer base that is kind of holding off on this stuff. So it is not the actual dollar amount, but it's more like the proportion of like our water users versus sewer users. So I think that might be an interesting way to present the information in the future. And then, again, just kind of tapping in or digging in a little bit on the extent to which these folks are, and I don't want to create a bunch of work, but taking advantage of our programs, our care program, that kind of stuff. So anyway, thanks for the presentation.
I can absolutely incorporate that in the future.
Okay, is there any more questions from the board? No. This is a public hearing, so are there anybody from the public that would like to speak on this matter? Seeing none, closing the public hearing and asking you for what action you'd like us to consider.
Okay. Staff is requesting that the board approve the list of delinquent accounts and adopt resolution number 3318-25, authorizing the list of delinquent accounts to be added to the 2025-26 Eldorado County Tax Assessors Roll.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second.
Thank you.
And that motion passes unanimously.
Okay, moving on to item 6B, 2025 Test Flow Project Award, Mark Silos.
Good afternoon, Mark Silos, Water Resources Manager, and I'm here today to recommend award for our 2025 Test Well Project. And so on May 15th, 2025, the board authorized staff to advertise for construction bids for the 2025 Test Well Project. The scope of work includes drilling and installation of fiberglass long-screen test wells at 942 Tanglewood Drive and 2438 Cattleman's Trail, geophysical and lithologic logging, and pump operational support for well testing. And separately, we've retained best environmental subsurface technologies, who will be serving as our construction manager for this project, as well as conducting the well testing itself. And so this project was advertised on Planet Bids on May 16th, 2025. We had a mandatory pre-bid conference on June 3rd, 2025, with 5 prime contractors in attendance. Bids were open on June 24th at 2 p.m. We received 3 bids ranging from $1,475,452 to about $2.5 million. The engineer's estimate for construction of the project was $1.6 million, so a little bit under the estimate. Greg Drilling is the low bid. The bid contained 6 minor contractual irregularities, but all of the information was verified and confirmed with the district requirements. So before I read the requested action, are there any questions?
I guess just references, grade drilling.
Greg, we don't do a lot of drilling. Right, but yeah, we've heard good things about them. We have tons of similar projects where they've been just the same kind of well testing that we're doing. So
did you speak to anyone that they have worked with?
I haven't, but we can reach out to references.
Yeah.
Is that a local?
No, they're in the East Bay. Yeah. Local enough. Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions from the board? What action would you like us to consider?
Find minor irregularities in the bid from Greg Drilling LLC to be immaterial and waive minor irregularities and award the project to the lowest responsible bidder, Greg Drilling LLC, in the amount of $1,475,452.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Presentation passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 6C, Public Agency Retirement Services, the PARS, 115 Trust Adoption. This is Andrea.
Good afternoon, Board of Directors. In our last finance committee, Matt Spooner from PARS, Public Agency Retirement Service, presented an option for long-term financing of the district's CalPERS unfunded liability through tax-exempt 115 trust adoption. It is recommended that we so do this and that we utilize it for long-term investments to be able to fund our outstanding liability going into future years. The funding will be determined by the Finance Committee on an annual budget basis, and in addition, we will not be funding it immediately. Rather, we'll have a following Finance Committee to address how much we want to fund at this time. In addition, we will not be charged any fees until the trust is actually funded. So this is simply a request to adopt the resolution for the 115 trust to establish it. Are there any questions?
I was going to say, we talked about this in depth in finance. To Andrew's comment, there's no initial kind of startup fee, and really was, to the retirement liability we face, and Andrew can give a much better description of what that is. But it's significant into the years to come, and so this seemed like an exciting product that kind of, I think the term he kept using was smooth that over, and so I think in terms of finance, it was something we supported.
So just to give you an idea, the unfunded liability for each year is about $1.3, $1.5 million, and historically the district has paid that in full on July 1st of each fiscal year. So this would be a way where we could start saving to pay that as well, and we could pull that money at any time that we wanted to once it's funded. And there's no minimum amount that we have to fund either. It is completely up to us what we would like to fund.
Sounds like a great product.
Yeah. Okay. What would you like us to consider? What action?
I recommend to adopt resolution number 331425, approving the adoption of the Public Agencies Post-Employment Benefits Trust administered by Public Agency Retirement Services.
Have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. And that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Andrea. Moving on to item 7, standing and ad hoc committees and liaison reports. Just start with you, Nick.
Yeah, so I think just before this, we had our finance committee meeting. So the first thing we went over, and Shane, you're gonna love this, is our charter. And so, following kind of in a similar format, and kind of, similar to what we did with efficiency. So, we're gonna be circulating it with the full board, once it's, kind of finalized and formatted. One of the things we had talked about adding, is essentially, for many years, previous boards did not, we're not financing our financial responsibilities appropriately, hence the kind of deficit we find ourselves in today. And so we wanted to kind of highlight, kind of that reality, just to kind of provide guidance that the whole goal of this committee is that, we're being as efficient with our financial resources as possible, but we're also not getting ourselves into that situation again because, we're digging ourselves out of it 10 years from now, 15 years from now. Keeping things as low as possible seems really, really appealing. And so, that final draft will be, kind of updated and then circulated to the full board for discussion. So I thought that was really positive. I don't know why, if you want to, we're going to get into our rate assistance, and so kind of tier 1, tier 2. I'll kind of give the high strokes, and then, Ryan can kind of fill in with all the specifics. But really, what the conversation was for tier 1, tier 2, what kind of limitations from a financial, kind of reality do we want to put on tier 1 and tier 2? And so, I'll let Ryan get into numbers, but really what we were looking at is, increasing, setting the financial cap for tier 1, about $100,000 more of where we are now, and I'll let Ryan get into why that is, and kind of prep us in previous board meetings. And then similarly, that $100,000 wouldn't necessarily be new expenditure from our property taxes. The tier 2, we had originally budgeted $50,000. I think we're at like $5,000, and so hadn't been getting a lot of use from that, and so we were thinking, set that at 10, bring 40,000 that we had budgeted for that over to where it's actually being used, and so that would kind of cushion that. As Ryan continues his additional outreach, we had talked about, any conversation in terms of a senior citizen discount. I think looking back to the board comments from, Dave when he was still on the board, Nick, your comments, and then I think, Kelly and I's discussion, we weren't terribly supportive of that as an idea going forward, a senior citizen discount, but we did talk about tier 2 increasing kind of the percentage that people that would be able to, exactly, so that way families, other people could do it, and again, with the caps being set, we can really kind of control that. What really I found incredibly exciting before I pass it over to Ryan is, we were the first PUD on Tahoe to do it. Now North Tahoe and Tahoe City have both kind of followed suit, and so I think this was a really positive effort and great lead by the whole STPD staff to bring this forward. And I think, I'll throw it over to you, or Kelly, I don't know if you want to throw anything on them.
What he said.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. That was a good summary. I'll give you some more details. So the Finance Committee discussion was coming out of some discussions I'd had with the full board about ahead of our kind of expanded outreach to this list of Liberty customers who are on their care program. So we got that list from Liberty, and our plan was to do some targeted outreach to those customers because we know they qualify for our program, but are not enrolled. So there are just under 600 of those, and so before we did that outreach, we wanted to talk to the board about whether we want to establish a budget limit. So looking at the numbers, right now, our tier 1, as of our July billing, tier 1 we have 470 customers enrolled in the program, tier 2 only 12, so that has been slow to grow. We did a lot of outreach, but most of the customers who actually joined the program through our outreach efforts qualified for tier 1. So they were not aware of that. They were not aware of Liberty's care program. They met their income guidelines, so they enrolled in their care program in our tier 1. So right now, the budget has been about, at the old rate schedule, it was about $165,000 a year. So now it looks like it's going to be about $185,000 moving forward. And so that's where that number came from of, the discussion at the Finance Committee was that we probably do want to establish a budget cap, and so like Nick mentioned, Tahoe City and North Tahoe PUD have recently created programs very similar to ours. They're both two-tiered programs. They both started with one tier, and actually both this year expanded their program to include tier 2, and they have the same requirements that we have. So the only difference is that their discount is a flat rate while ours is a percentage. So Tier 1 is 25%, Tier 2 15%. So what we were thinking, and they both, just so you know, have established budgets for the program. So we had a year or so ago added to our application language stating that the program is first come, first served, and funding is limited. Even though we didn't have an official cap for Tier 1 at that time, we wanted to just get that on the application in the event that we did want to do that. And so, yeah, we had talked about some of these numbers and where we're heading. And so what the idea that came out of the Finance Committee is that we'll start doing some outreach to these people on the Liberty list who will qualify, and we'll see what kind of response we get. So that's kind of one of the unknowns is how many of these 600 customers who qualify are going to fill out an application and join our program. We have done pretty much everything we can to kind of reduce the barriers to entry for our program. We've made it very simple. We've worked with Liberty. We now have an online application in English and Spanish, and we have paper applications, so different ways that people can get enrolled. We help them in the office. If anybody's having trouble with that, we can help them get enrolled. And since Liberty does our income verification for CARE, our program is just basically a one-page application, and we leave that on file just for our auditors, the backup for funding this program. And as a reminder, it's funded from property tax revenue, which is about $12 million a year. And so this $285,000, I think we were thinking somewhere around 2 or 3% of that revenue. So I think what we talked about is that we'll begin this, maybe we set the budget initially there, and then we'll begin this outreach and see what kind of response we get, and then I will keep the board updated as that program enrollment changes, and then we can kind of fine-tune that budget for this program as we go along and get more information. Nick mentioned too, we did talk about Tier 2 being kind of underutilized. We really felt like that. What we were hearing from customers calling in is that they were mostly retired senior citizens who didn't meet the income qualifications for the CARE program in our existing program. And so we were hoping that Tier 2, which is, CARE is 200% of the federal poverty limits, Tier 2 is 300%. So that puts it like a household of 1 to 2, the income limit is about $64,000. 3, I think, was $79,000, and then it kind of goes up like that, $16,000 per person. So one of the things we talked about is how can we better target this group, because we're still hearing from a lot of customers who don't qualify for Tier 2, but are expressing that they're struggling with the bill. So one of the ideas was to expand raise the income eligibility limits for our Tier 2 with that 15% discount. Again, with kind of a lower funding limit to see if we can keep that targeted. And the senior discount, like Nick said, we discussed that, and it sounded like the sentiment was it's not targeted to the people who really need that. So we're trying to figure out, what can we do with Tier 2 to reach people who need that, and also kind of work our way into a budget for this program that's based on the need in the community.
And I think one of the things we discussed was, part of the concern and the reason for, establishing this budget now is, Ryan and his team are doing such a great job. Like, now that we know the people that are, enrolled in CARE with Liberty, not versus us, like, what are those financial realities? And so in terms of, direct outreach, we did, starting, with a sample size of, that outreach to start to get a sense of, what do we think our response rate's going to be, kind of percentage-wise to kind of further look at it, and then kind of reassess this annually as we go forward. And so I thought it was a really positive discussion. And again, really proud of the district for kind of leading the way on this effort in the basin.
So we're still not quite, we haven't identified a cap yet necessarily, so you did mention $185K for the Tier 1. So what we... Not working through, you want to work through the list a little bit, get a better feel for what's maybe coming?
I think the recommendation I heard coming out of Finance Committee was to maybe recommend moving forward with an ordinance to set a cap at $285,000, and then revisit that next year. Total.
Tier 1 and 2?
No, just Tier 1.
285.
Yeah. In total, it would be $295.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Total?
Yeah.
So we would be readjusting,
Tier 2.
Yeah, decreasing the budget for Tier 2 and setting a new budget limit for Tier 1 at $285,000.
The one thing you didn't state, the committee's recommendation on the income level for Tier 2 going forward, from 300% above the poverty level.
Yes. So it's currently set at 300, and we were looking at 400%?
Yeah.
And this is We're not making any decisions today on this, by the way?
Yeah, they'll be-
Good, okay.
So if the board is interested in seeing an ordinance that contains basically those terms, then I can bring that back to you. But it would take an ordinance, because this is part of our administrative code, to amend that section.
And I would also suggest, I don't think we talked about it in committee, but if that 10,000, if we started getting closer to that, kind of with this expansion, I'd be open, and less of a kind of response, say, in tier 1, I would be open to kind of reshuffling that slightly depending on it. But this is kind of where we'd set it to start and then kind of reassess as we need.
I mean, I'd love to see something like that come through the finance committee as like a recommendation and packaged up for the board. I don't know, because I think finance committee is fairly infrequent, so I don't know if that works or not, but
That's what
trying to use the committee. Yeah, I know, but having it a little bit more, of a,
Be a draft of the resolution, maybe, or?
yeah, so is that, okay, but it's not agendized or anything.
It's not agendized today,
Yeah.
but the agenda item can be drafted
Yeah.
as a recommendation from the finance committee. Yeah. And so our recommendation would be that the 285 cap, the 10%, and the raising from the 3 to 400%. For tier 2. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
So that was.
Okay, yeah, we'll bring an ordinance with the recommendation of the finance committee.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
And I'll let you do efficiency if you want, Shane. We're happy to do it if you want to do both.
Why don't you go kick it off, and I'll catch any loose crumbs or anything that might be there.
Yeah, so we had the efficiency meeting, what day was that?
That was the 9th?
The 9th. Similar to finance, we discussed charter. I think it was, a good conversation. Things we got into is, kind of a host of different things. I don't have the agenda in front of me, unfortunately. But, we were looking at, some of the new, efficiency realities, that we could move forward with as a district. Again, finalizing the charter as we went forward, and then, had an update on the solar project. And that'll come the next board action for my requested, bi-monthly update. But I would say, the solar project is moving forward well. Keeps moving forward. There's always the small kind of permitting hiccups we continue to find as we're moving forward, but we should be right at the end with the city. And if need be, we could communicate kind of with senior staff at the city if we're kind of hitting any obstacles or barriers. So those were kind of the high themes. Similar to finance. The charter will be coming back to the full board. I think we all, Shane did a great job of kind of doing the initial drafts, so, credit to Shane. And then all kind of charters from finance to efficiency will all kind of take on that same form and theme. And so, I don't know if you want anything else.
Yeah, no, really, I think you kind of hit everything, all the high points, just to say that, Jim was there, our asset management, program manager, and he provided us an update on the asset management program, which is great. Looks like we're heading in the right direction there. I can't think of anything beyond that. Looks like we are expecting Civic Spark to provide an update on the baseline energy study next time we meet. I don't know, am I missing anything, Megan? Okay, yeah. We spend most of the time talking about through the charters, but thanks for the update on that. Okay. Anything else on finance, Kelly, from you? All right, Joe, you just want to give us an update on the ops?
Yeah, I can kick us off. You can fill in. The fill-in guy. The big thing was from Mark, the Bayview back online, which is awesome. So just before the deadline there. And also Elks Club back online too, so I saw that. A couple other things where some other was just kind of some outstanding stuff and kind of waiting on the kickoff for the Tahoe backup power. Everything's kind of in limbo on was it the transfer switch? Yeah, I think it was the transfer switch we were waiting on to kick that off. Is that correct? I think it was. But, also got an update on the surface water that we're kind of holding the ground there and not moving too much more forward with that, I guess is really what it was.
The water rights.
Yeah, the water rights piece of it. So, filters 3 and 4 were back online, I think that day that we met. So that was a 11th hour update on that one as well. And then the other exciting one was the desolation, opening of the valve. I don't know if anybody wants to take a guess at, what came through that thing once they turned the valve, but it was a whopping 2 gallons per minute, so, but it is connected and we are taking the discharge, I guess, at the slow rate that we're doing it. So, pretty much it for me.
Just to kind of emphasize that we did check off one of our capital improvement projects, filters 3 and 4, which is congratulations. It's awesome to hear that news. And again, the wells being back online, that's really good news. And then Shelley might be able to help me out with this, but the hexavalent chromium monitoring violation. So we typically monitor total chromium, but they're looking for us to monitor more specifically chromium 6. So it's going to blow up. Nonetheless, it sounds like it wasn't technically a violation. It was just more that we did not report it. So I guess we're going to have to get that all solved and more specific. So I think that's all I got for our office committee.
My turn?
Sure. You got anything?
Yeah, Atlanta Water Agency met last week. I've been going down there in person. It's been great to just get better acquainted with that group. Been doing a lot of work on the strategic plan. That's finally adopted now, with a lot more acknowledgement, I think, of Tahoe and Tahoe operations and Tahoe issues in general, which is, I think, a big step. Also the budget we approved last week, and that also has like a line item. They want to actually do some additional planning work in the basin specifically and try and do 2 distinct planning efforts, one for the west slope and one for the east slope. So they'll be working with us and Tahoe City PUD, and I think that will give us a better opportunity to connect with their planning expertise and hopefully get better acknowledgement of, what we do up here. Because we definitely do a lot in the planning sphere that I am noticing on the west slope that the water agency does for theirs, so, and providers. So, something we're still working on. So I think we're making good progress, though. Just wanted to report that.
You just keyed off one of our topics in the ops committee that I did not touch on, which is the water supply master plan update, and they can talk through maybe a more comprehensive approach to that and looking at our entire system, just not beyond supply, but looking at our entire system in terms of funding opportunities. So efficiency is
match that up with the effort that Edgewater Water, just make sure we're joining forces on that. Okay, cool.
Just real quick, just follow up on your conversation, or your attendance at that board meeting.
I guess a month, 6 weeks ago, some of us here met with Rebecca and their consultant to talk through a little bit of our thoughts on our responsibility as the Groundwater Sustainable Agency. And we have a follow-up meeting that's going to be scheduled next month in August, and just to continue discussions on how they can maybe help be a better partner with us to fulfill those requirements as the Eldorado Water Agency. It just seems to make sense that they have more of more skin in the game, I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
So as it relates to the water supply master plan and the overall water delivery system, there's a workshop to come. Just kind of going back to yesterday. So, okay, I think we're done with that agenda item. Unless there's anything else. Going on to item number 9, the staff attorney reports.
I don't think we have any.
Done?
Do you have anything, Adrian? Okay.
Okay, moving on to item 10, general manager report.
I got a couple of things. For those that haven't seen it, the Tahoe Summit this year is on August 6th, and it's local. It's going to be at Valhalla. So for those who are interested in going, please let Shelley and or Melanie know, because especially if we go, we have to notice it. I know they're going to be requiring shuttles back and forth, but I'm not sure what the logistics of that is yet. Last time we had it at Valhalla, they had people meet at the high school.
Yeah, high school. Parking's at the high school. Free shuttles, limited parking, so.
Yeah.
I heard it's sold out already. It's already closed, yeah, registration's closed.
Well, that actor Jeremy Renner is giving the keynote. He's the keynote speaker.
If it takes an actor to sell it out, not a politician.
Yeah. Forget about it.
Actors are more honest. One other thing I wanted to bring up, as a little bit of a good news, to follow up on Andrew's report about the PARS 115 trust as it relates to the CalPERS liability. CalPERS is basically funded with two sources. The whole retirement system. It's funded with investment returns on their portfolio, which is massive. It's like $550 billion, and employer contributions from all the member agencies. And so on an annual basis, they determine what their rate of return was on their investments, and then employer rates are basically adjusted through their actuarial reporting system following that. And so fiscal year 24-25 that just finished June 30th, their rate of return was 11.6%. And the reason that's good news is because their assumed rate of return that they build into their actuarial reports is 6.8. And so when they outperform that, that's usually positive news for all the member agencies on some of the future rate increases going forward. So that was very good news. And the last thing I had is, following our last board meeting, we had our annual employee recognition picnic, which was really good this year. We had a lot of people being recognized in various categories for years of service, but I just want to point out some of the biggies. For example, we had 2 employees that were being recognized for 35 years of service, and that was Chris Stanley, our field operations manager, and Kyle Schrauben, who's been our heavy maintenance supervisor since like the day after high school. So literally his entire career has been at this district, which is interesting. And then the longest tenured employee that was recognized was for 40 years, and that was Phil Trella, who's our chief plant operator in the building next door. And then we also, on an annual basis, recognize a crew of the year and an employee of the year, and that's voted on by the employee population. And so the crew of the year this year was Underground Sewer Repair and Diamond Valley Ranch. And then the employee of the year was Juan Marquez, who is a member of the Underground Sewer crew. So, yeah, congratulations to all those people. It was a really good turnout, and it's always a fun event that lets people be recognized in front of their peers.
Yeah. Did anybody from the board make it?
So did.
One and only. I was there in my cut-off punk shirt and my backwards hat and everything.
Great, thanks for the update. Okay, item 11 is the notice of past and future meetings. We are going to close this meeting and open a closed session in a bit. Nothing to report? Correct.